The desert sands are shifting, revealing what they have hidden for thousands of years. Our planet's changing climate is now the world's most unlikely archaeologist in Egypt. We often see melting ice and fierce sandstorms as purely destructive forces, yet they are inadvertently peeling back the layers of time. This is the core paradox of modern discovery, where the very crisis threatening our future is unlocking secrets from the ancient past. You are about to journey to the newly revealed frontiers of Egyptology, where the environment acts as both a dire threat and a magical key. By the end, you will understand how a warming world is rewriting the entire story of human civilization, from sunken cities emerging from the Nile to lost trade routes thawing from distant ice. How will these fragile, newly found treasures change our understanding of history before they vanish forever? Far from the sun-baked Nile, another layer of this story is emerging from the world's melting ice. High in mountain ranges like the Alps and the Caucasus, ancient glaciers are receding at an unprecedented rate. They are not just revealing rock, but time capsules from a forgotten world of commerce. These ice patches, acting as natural freezers, have preserved materials for thousands of years that would have completely decayed in Egypt's arid climate. Imagine a leather sandal, its stitching still intact, or a roll of woven textile, its colors still faintly visible. These are the kinds of organic treasures now thawing into the light, and they are fundamentally changing our map of the ancient world. For decades, historians pictured Egyptian trade routes as primarily river and coastal ventures. But these icy artifacts tell a different, far more ambitious story. The discovery of materials like Nubian ebony or Levantine resins in high alpine passes suggests a sprawling network of overland trade that crossed daunting, frozen frontiers. It means that Egyptian merchants or their intermediaries were not just sailing the predictable Nile, but were also guiding caravans through some of the most treacherous terrain on Earth. These were not casual exchanges, but highly organized, long-distance missions to procure resources that were unavailable in the homeland. Consider a specific find, like a piece of cordage made from a plant native to the Levant, discovered melted out of an ice patch in the Swiss Alps. This single, fragile piece of twisted fiber is a silent testament to an incredible journey. It had to travel from its point of origin, across vast distances, and then be carried up into those freezing high altitudes by a trader, perhaps over 2,500 years ago. The ice held it in perfect suspended animation, waiting for our warmer world to tell its tale. This is not just an artifact, it is a data point proving that the reach of Egyptian influence and its thirst for foreign goods stretched hundreds of miles further than any textbook ever assumed. These fragile organic finds are the missing pieces of a puzzle we did not even know we were solving. While stone monuments in Egypt speak of power and eternity, a frozen leather strap speaks of the gritty reality of commerce, of the individual travelers who braved icy winds to connect empires. Each new melt reveals another clue, forcing us to redraw the lines of ancient globalization. But this evidence is as fleeting as the ice it was trapped in. Once exposed to the modern air, these delicate materials can rot away in a matter of years, or even months. So a race is on, a race against the very climate change that revealed them, to save these whispers from the past before they are lost forever. Back in the vastness of the Sahara, the winds themselves are now digging into the past. As climate patterns shift, stronger and more frequent winds are scouring the western desert, performing a natural excavation on a colossal scale. This process is called deflation, where persistent gusts lift and carry away countless grains of sand, slowly lowering the desert floor itself. What was buried for millennia is now being systematically unburied. The sand is peeling back to reveal the stone foundations of entire villages, scattered pottery shards that once held water or grain, and the blackened, circular stains of ancient fire pits. These are the ghostly footprints of communities that thrived here when the Sahara was not a desert at all, but a green savanna teeming with life. These prehistoric people lived through the region's gradual desertification, and their abandoned homes are now telling the story of that epic climate shift. Among the most startling revelations from the shifting sands are the desert kites. From the ground, these structures look like random piles of rock, but from above, their true genius is unveiled. Satellite imagery, now able to see through the thinning sand blanket, shows these are massive, purpose-built stone formations. They consist of long, converging walls that funneled herds of antelope or gazelle into a central enclosure, where they could be hunted. Think of them as the world's first large-scale hunting traps, built by communities who had to adapt their survival strategies as their green world slowly turned to dust. The reappearance of these kites provides a stunningly clear picture of human ingenuity in the face of environmental collapse. It shows a society that did not simply vanish, but one that changed its tools and tactics to survive a transforming world. Each newly exposed stone wall and every pottery fragment adds a crucial piece to the puzzle of human resilience. We are seeing, in real time, the archaeological evidence of how people confronted a changing climate thousands of years ago. Their story is no longer just a theory in a textbook. It is a physical record being laid bare by the very same environmental forces that shaped their destiny. This is not a slow, deliberate dig by archaeologists. It is a rapid, uncontrolled unveiling. The same winds that reveal these fragile sites can also destroy them, scattering the very evidence we seek to understand. So as the desert sands continue to move, they offer us a fleeting, priceless window into the past, challenging us to learn from ancient adaptations before these new clues are once again lost to the dunes. The river itself is now yielding its own long-held secrets. The Great Nile, Egypt's timeless artery of life, is experiencing dramatic new fluctuations in its flow. Upstream changes in rainfall and modern dam management are causing the river's water levels to rise and fall more sharply than in recent memory. During periods of significant drop, the receding waters pull back like a curtain, exposing riverbank sites that have been submerged for generations. Suddenly, ancient stone quays appear, their surfaces still worn smooth by the feet of long-vanished merchants. The foundations of small settlements emerge from the mud, offering a raw, unvarnished look at the daily life that thrived at the water's edge. These are not the grand tombs of pharaohs, but the humble stages of common existence, where fishermen once mended their nets and traders loaded their goods onto reed boats. This vanishing waterline reveals the opposite story as well. In some regions, prolonged drought and a falling water table are providing an unexpected archaeological advantage. Areas that were perpetually waterlogged, like the silt-choked remains of ancient ports and harbors, are now becoming accessible for the first time. These sites were the bustling economic hearts of their cities, the vital nodes where goods from across the known world were unloaded onto Egyptian soil. For centuries, their fragile organic remains wooden piers, rope fragments, even discarded papyrus records were preserved in the oxygen-poor mud, but completely out of reach. Now, archaeologists can conduct detailed excavations, mapping the precise layout of a Pharaonic-era dockyard or recovering a cargo of imported pottery that never made it to market. Think of the difference between these two types of discovery. The receding river shows us the public face of the Nile, the steps where people interacted directly with its flowing waters. The drying harbors, however, expose the intricate, hidden machinery of commerce itself. One gives us a glimpse of the fisherman's daily catch, while the other reveals the ledger of the merchant who sold it. Together, they form a complete picture of a civilization that lived and breathed by the rhythm of its great river. Each newly exposed stone and every waterlogged artifact, rescued from the mud, adds another line to the story of how ordinary Egyptians built an empire, all while the river that gave them life continues to shift and change, offering up its secrets only when it chooses. While the Nile gives up its secrets, the Mediterranean Sea is taking them away. Egypt's northern coastline faces a relentless assault from rising sea levels, a slow-moving crisis that threatens to erase entire chapters of history. The ancient city of Alexandria, founded by Alexander the Great, is on the front lines. Beneath the modern city and its harbor lie the drowned remnants of its glorious past, including the sprawling palace complex of Cleopatra and the massive stone foundations of the legendary lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. These submerged ruins are now under a new, invisible attack. Salt water is seeping into the porous stone, crystallizing inside and slowly fracturing the masonry from within. It is a silent, chemical destruction that weakens these structures irreparably, threatening to turn monumental history into underwater dust. Yet, in a profound and tragic paradox, this same destructive force is also creating unprecedented opportunities for discovery. The very storms and powerful currents intensified by our changing climate are scouring the seabed. They act as immense, unpredictable underwater plows, shifting vast blankets of sand and sediment that have hidden sunken treasures for millennia. A single violent storm can alter the underwater landscape overnight. Imagine a Roman merchant galley, laden with amphorae full of Egyptian grain, that sank during a tempest 2,000 years ago. For centuries, it has rested under a protective layer of sand, completely invisible. Then, a modern storm of unusual ferocity strikes the coast. The powerful currents it generates sweep away that sandy shroud, and suddenly the ship's wooden ribs and its cargo of clay jars are exposed for the first time since the age of the emperors. This is not just a theoretical scenario. Such events are happening. Each newly revealed wreck is a frozen moment in time, a capsule of ancient global trade. The amphorae themselves are historical records, their shapes and residues telling experts exactly where they were made and what precious commodity they carried from the fertile Nile Valley to the hungry cities of the Roman Empire. A shipwreck is more than a collection of artifacts. It is a preserved business ledger and a cultural snapshot. It can reveal the route the ship was taking, the technology of its construction, and the economic ties that bound ancient civilizations together. The coastline is thus a race between two opposing forces, one that is gradually dissolving our heritage and another that is abruptly revealing it. The window to document these fleeting glimpses is terrifyingly short, for the same sea that uncovered a wreck will eventually rebury it, or worse, break it apart. So archaeologists find themselves in a desperate scramble, watching the weather not for a good day to dig, but for a storm that might have done the digging for them, hoping to reach a site before the ocean changes its mind and takes its secret back. This same salt water that eats away at coastal stone is performing a different kind of magic inland. As sea levels push salt further into the Nile Delta and ancient irrigation leaves behind mineral residues, the soil itself is becoming saltier. This salinization is a serious threat to modern farmers, yet it creates a strangely perfect environment for preserving the past. Salt acts as a powerful desiccant, relentlessly pulling every trace of moisture out of organic materials. It is a natural mummification process, happening not in a prepared tomb, but accidentally, in the very ground where people lived and worked. While the elite were preserved with expensive resins and careful rituals, the common people are now being preserved by the earth itself. Their stories are emerging from the salty soil, told not in gold, but in the mundane objects of daily survival. In the Delta region, archaeologists have unearthed what some call a salt mummy. This was not a royal burial, but an individual whose body was naturally desiccated by the salt-saturated earth. The skin and features were preserved in stunning detail, offering a direct, human connection to a person who would otherwise be just a skeleton. Nearby, baskets woven from reeds were found, their intricate patterns still perfectly intact, as if they were woven yesterday. Leather sandals, wooden tools, even remnants of food like grains and dried fish have been found in this salinized state. These objects are a time capsule of common life. A royal tomb shows us how a pharaoh wanted to be remembered for eternity. A salt-preserved basket shows us how an ordinary family carried their goods to market. The difference is profound. One is a statement of power, the other is a whisper of routine. This accidental preservation gives us an unfiltered, almost intimate look into the realities of ancient Egyptian life, far from the grandeur of the pyramids. We see the wear on a sandal sole, the repair stitch on a leather bag, the specific weave of a mat. These are the fingerprints of everyday existence, preserved not by human intention, but by the very environmental changes that shaped their world. Each salty fragment is a raw data point, unedited and honest, showing us the resilience and ingenuity of the people who built civilization from the ground up. High above the shifting sands and the receding rivers, a silent observer is tracking these changes with an unblinking eye. Satellite archaeology is turning the global climate crisis into an unprecedented tool for discovery, allowing us to see what was once completely invisible from the ground. This technology does not rely on digging, but on seeing the subtle ways the Earth itself betrays the secrets buried beneath it. The principle revolves around crop marks, a phenomenon where buried ancient walls or trenches influence the growth of plants above them. A stone foundation just a few feet below, the surface will hold less moisture, causing the plants growing directly above it to become stunted and stressed, turning yellow or brown sooner than the surrounding vegetation. Conversely, an ancient buried ditch, filled with richer, deeper soil, will hold more water, creating a line of lusher, greener, taller plant growth. From the ground, these patterns are often impossible to discern, but from space, they form clear, geometric outlines of a lost world. Our changing climate is now supercharging this effect. Intensified cycles of drought and unusual rainfall are stressing the surface vegetation in new ways, making these hidden patterns starkly visible from orbit. A period of severe drought will cause the plants over a buried wall to wither dramatically, while a sudden downpour will make the plants over a nutrient-filled ditch thrive explosively. The landscape itself becomes a developing photograph, and climate change is the chemical agent bringing the image into sharp focus. A striking example of this emerged with the potential rediscovery of the lost city of Tanis, once a powerful capital of ancient Egypt. For centuries, its exact location and full extent were shrouded in mystery, its ruins believed to be scattered and mostly buried. Then, researchers analyzing satellite images taken after a specific pattern of seasonal rains noticed something extraordinary. Faint lines and rectangles emerged in the vegetation, tracing the outlines of entire city blocks, temples, and a major network of streets. The city's complete urban plan, hidden for millennia, was suddenly legible in the language of stressed crops and damp soil. This was not a single buried building, but a sprawling metropolis revealed by the very climatic conditions that once made its discovery so difficult. Every new satellite pass over Egypt now holds the potential for such a revelation, each image a page of a history book we are just learning to read. The same environmental forces that threaten our future are, from this incredible vantage point, illuminating our past with breathtaking clarity, offering a bird's-eye view of a civilization being slowly, magically, drawn back onto the map. The monumental rescue of Abu Simbel taught the world to move mountains for history, but now the waters it holds back are revealing a second act. Lake Nasser, the vast reservoir created by the Aswan High Dam, is itself becoming an archaeological instrument. Its water levels are no longer stable, subject to the twin pressures of regional drought and the urgent need for water release. As the lake shrinks and expands, it acts like a slow, rhythmic breath, and with each exhale, the drowned ruins of an empire's edge return to the sun. These are the massive mud-brick fortresses of Nubia, the formidable southern frontier guards of ancient Egypt, thought to be lost forever beneath the waves. During the great salvage campaigns of the 1960s, the focus was rightly on the giants, the carved rock temples that were painstakingly relocated to higher ground. The sprawling mud-brick complexes along the Nile's second cataract, like Buhin and Semna, could not be saved in the same way. Archaeologists documented what they could, but as the waters rose, these vast structures were surrendered to the lake, their lower levels submerged and sealed in mud. For decades, they existed only in old photographs and expedition notes, their full secrets locked away. Now, the lake's retreat is granting a reprieve. The receding waterline is peeling back the liquid shroud, exposing the mighty ramparts and crumbled walls of these military outposts for the first time in half a century. This is not merely a reappearance, it is a chance for redemption. Modern archaeology possesses tools those initial salvagers could not have dreamed of. As the fortress of Buhin emerges from the dripping mud, teams can now conduct high-resolution laser scans of its defenses, mapping every brick with millimeter accuracy. They can use ground-penetrating radar to trace the outlines of entire streets and administrative buildings that are still buried, creating a complete digital twin of the site before the waters inevitably return. The original excavations provided a rough sketch, but these new surveys are filling in the masterpiece with breathtaking detail. What do these returning giants tell us? The fortresses of the Second Cataract were not just simple guard posts. They were statements of absolute power, built to project Egyptian authority over the turbulent river rapids and to control the flow of trade and people from the gold-rich lands of Nubia. The re-exposed walls of Semnur reveal its brutal efficiency, a design meant to withstand any assault and dominate the landscape visually and militarily. Studying them now, in their partially revealed state, allows us to understand the daily life of the soldiers stationed at the very edge of the known world. The fluctuating lake is offering a fleeting, precious opportunity to ask new questions of these old sentinels, to learn how an empire patrolled its farthest frontier, and to document their final, silent stand against time itself. Deep in the desert's heart, the Karga oasis was once a vital emerald of life. This was not an isolated refuge, but a bustling crossroads where caravans converged, linking the Nile Valley to the distant trade routes of Africa. The same fierce winds that scour the open desert are now reshaping the very edges of this oasis. Massive sand dunes are migrating, and powerful storms are stripping away the protective blanket that has hidden the oasis's ancient outskirts for centuries. The result is an archaeological renaissance, as the periphery of Karga reveals its long-buried secrets. Entire cemeteries are emerging from the sliding sands, their simple grave markers speaking of a diverse population that lived and died here under Persian and Roman rule. The foundations of mud brick settlements are appearing, outlining the homes and workshops of the people who service the great caravans. One of the most spectacular revelations involves the Temple of Hibis, a structure dedicated to the god Amun. For years, it was partially engulfed by dunes, its full grandeur obscured. Now, as encroaching sand is blown clear, the temple's massive gate and intricate columned halls stand in stark, new clarity against the desert sky. Archaeologists can finally study its entire layout and the inscriptions on walls that were, until recently, buried. Similarly, the Najura temple complex, perched on a hilltop, is being systematically unburied. This was a religious center at the absolute edge of the empire, a place where Egyptian gods were worshipped under the watchful eyes of foreign rulers. The fresh exposure of its altars and ceremonial spaces offers profound new insights into how faith was practiced and adapted in this remote, multicultural hub. What does it mean to find a temple to Egyptian deities so far from the Nile? It tells us that the power of these gods, and the authority of the pharaohs who championed them, extended deep into the desert, carried along the spines of camels in trade caravans. The sand is revealing not just buildings, but the spiritual heartbeat of a frontier society. These were people who clung to their traditions even as they lived in a world of constant cultural exchange. Every newly cleared stone at Najura adds a line to the story of how empires maintained their identity in distant lands. Yet this unveiling is a fragile, temporary gift. The same winds that clear a temple wall today can, in another season, begin to bury it once more. The race is on to document these freshly exposed wonders, to read the messages they hold from a time when the desert was not a barrier, but a highway, and the oasis was its most critical rest stop. Beneath the sprawling suburbs of modern Cairo, a lost city is fighting its way back to the surface. The relentless expansion of the metropolis, coupled with new pressures from a shifting climate, has triggered an unexpected archaeological revolution. In the district of Mataria, the urgent need for new infrastructure, including deeper foundations and complex drainage systems to handle erratic groundwater, has turned construction sites into dig sites. Bulldozers preparing the ground for a new future are instead scraping against the bones of an unimaginably ancient past. They are uncovering the remains of Heliopolis, the legendary city of the sun, a religious capital so thoroughly dismantled over millennia that scholars considered it a ghost, its glory existing only in texts. The very ground, made unstable by environmental change, is now yielding its secrets. Workers have struck massive limestone blocks that once formed the walls of colossal temples. They have unearthed fragments of statues so large they defy belief, including a quartzite statue of the powerful pharaoh Psamtik I, and a single fragment of a royal sculpture weighing 3 tons. Each of these stones is a piece of a puzzle we thought was lost forever. For centuries, the monuments of Heliopolis were systematically quarried to build medieval Cairo, its stones repurposed into mosques and city walls. The city of the sun priests and the sacred Benben stone was scavenged until almost nothing remained. To find a colossal statue in this context is not like finding a needle in a haystack. It is like finding a piece of the haystack itself, a fundamental piece of the original structure that was supposed to have vanished completely. The discovery of Pharaoh Psamtik's statue is particularly telling. He ruled during a time of national renewal, a leader who sought to restore Egypt's former grandeur. Finding his image here, in the heart of the ancient world's most revered cult center, connects a political story to a spiritual one. It proves that even in a period of revival, the sanctity of Heliopolis remained absolute. These emerging stones are more than just artifacts, they are the physical anchors of myths. This was the city where the world was first created, according to Egyptian belief, the place where the sun god Atum stood on the first mound of land to begin creation. To touch these blocks is to touch the literal foundation of their entire cosmology. The climate pressures forcing deeper digs are, in a tragic irony, also threatening these very finds. Rising groundwater can erode the stone from within, and the pace of urban development offers little time for careful excavation. Every discovery is a rescue operation, a frantic effort to pull a piece of the Sun City from the earth before it is reburied not by sand, but by concrete. This is the ultimate race, where the forces that are revealing a lost world are the same ones that could seal it away again for good. The sheer scale of devotion at Saqqara is staggering, a city of the dead built not for pharaohs, but for creatures deemed sacred. Here, millions upon millions of animal mummies were interrailed as offerings to the gods, a practice that continued for over 1,000 years. For centuries, archaeologists believed they had mapped the primary catacombs, these long, dark tunnels packed with linen-wrapped ibises and carefully entombed baboons. But the cliffs of Saqqara have been keeping a secret, one that only now, under the assault of new weather patterns, is being forced into the open. A single, violent flash flood, a type of extreme rain event once rare in this hyper-arid region, can change everything in one night. Torrents of water, gathering force as they rush down wadis, do not merely soak the sand, they carve into the very rock. This erosion acts like a geological scalpel, slicing away cliff faces to reveal the mouths of tunnels that were meticulously sealed in antiquity and then forgotten. Entire new galleries, brimming with votive mummies, are now appearing where there was only solid stone before. These newly exposed catacombs are not just additional storage rooms, they are pristine time capsules. Unlike tombs that were entered and looted over millennia, these sealed chambers have been waiting in a state of perfect preservation. Inside, the mummies are often still stacked in their original niches, their linen wrappings intact, and the ceramic jars that hold them unbroken. This sudden, unplanned unveiling presents a scientific opportunity that is as urgent as it is profound. Researchers are now rushing to apply modern technology to these ancient caches before the elements can damage them. Using portable CT scanners right in the field, they can peer through the wrappings without ever unrolling them, revealing the animal inside in incredible detail. They can see if a cat suffered from a broken bone that was healed, or if an ibis shows signs of a specific nutritional diet. Even more revealing is DNA analysis. By extracting genetic material from a single bone fragment, scientists can trace the ancestry of these sacred animals. Were they wild-caught from the Nile marshes, or were they the product of massive, industrial-scale breeding programs run by the temple priests? The answers are literally emerging from the washed-out cliffs. Each mummy is a data point in a vast, ancient economy of faith. The discovery of a new catacomb filled with thousands of dog mummies, for instance, forces us to reconsider the immense logistical operation required to sustain this religious practice. It speaks of a belief so powerful it could support entire industries dedicated to raising, mummifying, and interring millions of creatures. The climate shock that revealed these tunnels is, in a tragic twist, also a threat. The same erosion that opened the catacombs can destabilize them, and the next flood could wash away these fragile remains forever. So this is a rescue mission, a chance to understand the intimate relationship between the ancient Egyptians and their animal gods, all made possible by the very environmental forces that now jeopardize this priceless window into the soul of a civilization. The fragile whispers of daily life are now rising from the mud of a vanished lake. Far to the west of the Nile lies the vast Fayum Depression, a fertile oasis that was once the heart of a grand hydrological experiment. Here, the pharaohs of the Middle Kingdom engineered a masterpiece, channeling Nile floodwaters to create the immense Lake Moeris. For millennia, this artificial sea sustained a thriving population. But today, the lake is shrinking again, its shoreline pulled back by a combination of reduced Nile silt and modern irrigation demands. This retreat is not just exposing barren mudflats, it is peeling back the layers of entire towns that once bustled on its fertile banks. The receding waters and eroding soil are revealing vast garbage dumps, ancient middens where the residents of Greco-Roman cities like Keranis and Saknapeu Nissos toss their everyday refuse. These are not ordinary trash piles, they are time capsules of stunning intimacy, preserved for 2,000 years by the region's uniquely dry, salt-rich earth. While kings built monuments in stone, the common people wrote their history on papyrus, and they threw it all away. Now we are finding it. These garbage heaps have become the most important libraries in the world for understanding ordinary existence. The nitrous soil acted as a perfect preservative, protecting delicate papyrus from rot and insects. Archaeologists sifting through this ancient refuse are not uncovering gold or jewels, but something far more precious, the mundane documents of daily life. Imagine a tax receipt, carefully itemizing a farmer's payment in wheat, a personal letter from a soldier to his mother, filled with worries about his pay and a request for new socks. A shopping list for a dinner party, detailing the olives, fish, and wine needed to impress the neighbors. A contract for the sale of a donkey, complete with a clause about the animal's temperament. These are the raw, unfiltered voices of the people who lived, worked, loved, and worried under the rule of the Ptolemies, and later the Roman emperors. Each scrap of papyrus is a direct line into a single human moment, a thought frozen in time. The town of Saknapeu Nissos offers a particularly poignant example. It was a peculiar place, a religious settlement built on a barren hilltop far from the receding lake's edge, dedicated to the crocodile god Sobek. Its existence was always precarious, and its eventual abandonment was a mystery. The papyri recovered from its middens tell the story of its slow decline not in epic poems, but in administrative despair. They record dwindling temple revenues, petitions from priests complaining they could no longer afford to feed the sacred crocodiles, and legal disputes over water rights as the life-giving lake withdrew. We hear the voices of the priests themselves, not as holy men, but as bureaucrats struggling to keep their god and their community alive in the face of an unforgiving environment. This is the real story of the past, told not by its victors, but by its clerks and its shopkeepers. The erosion that now exposes these fragile documents is a double-edged sword, granting us this unparalleled glimpse into the ancient world of the everyday, while simultaneously threatening to dissolve these very same papyri into dust if they are not rescued in time. Even the sealed tombs of pharaohs are no longer safe from the weather. In the Valley of the Kings, the landscape itself is changing, carved by torrents of water that appear with terrifying speed. These are not gentle rains, but biblical deluges that tear through the dry wadis, hurling boulders and carving fresh channels into the ancient cliffs. For conservators, each flood is a waking nightmare, a force that can smash through modern protective gates and fill priceless burial chambers with mud and debris. Yet within this destruction lies a strange and compelling paradox. The same floodwaters that threaten known tombs have, throughout history, been the very reason others remained hidden and protected. A violent surge of water does not just deposit destruction, it can also perform a brutal kind of archaeology, scouring away centuries of accumulated rubble and rockfall. It can wash clean a cliff face, and in doing so, reveal the straight, unnatural line of a man-made doorway that was deliberately concealed in antiquity, its seal intact for over 3,000 years. The potential for such an event is electrifying. While the dream is always the discovery of a new royal tomb, an undisturbed resting place for a forgotten pharaoh, the more likely revelation is the tomb of a high noble or a royal scribe. Imagine a flood stripping away a blanket of alluvial gravel to reveal a narrow staircase cut into the bedrock. At the bottom, a sealed doorway, behind which lies a single chamber, its walls covered in paintings so vibrant they look freshly applied. The colors are protected from centuries of sunlight and wind, preserved in a time capsule of dry, still air. The artifacts within would not be the golden treasures of a king, but something perhaps more intimate, the personal belongings of a court official who served in the shadow of the throne. We might find his scribble palette, the cakes of dried ink still nestled in their slots. We could see his favorite chair, a beautifully carved stool that sat in his home. His personal correspondence, written on papyrus, could detail the inner workings of the royal court from a perspective we never hear. These objects tell the human story behind the empire's grandeur. The climate that now threatens the valley with more frequent and intense floods is the same force that could, at any moment, unlock another one of these hidden chambers. It is a race against the water, a desperate hope that the next flood to scar the landscape will reveal a new treasure before it destroys an old one. With each storm, the possibility hangs in the air, a whisper that the final secrets of the pharaoh's sacred valley are not yet all known, but are waiting just beneath the surface, for the rain to wash them clean. The Nile Delta is in a state of dramatic collapse, its very landmass sinking beneath the waves. This slow-motion crisis, driven by rising seas and the land itself compacting, creates a desperate race against the clock for archaeologists. As the Mediterranean Sea pushes further inland, saltwater swallows known archaeological sites, dissolving mudbrick and erasing history. Yet in a cruel paradox, this same destructive force is also a powerful, if fleeting, agent of discovery. The relentless waves that chew away at the modern coastline are simultaneously sculpting the past, carving back the earth to reveal civilizations that flourished here long before the first pyramid was ever conceived. While the famous sunken cities of Heracleion and Canopus capture the imagination, showing us the grandeur of a later era now lying beneath the bay of Aboukir, a quieter but even more profound revelation is happening inland. Here, the erosion of the delta's soft soil is peeling back time itself, exposing the footprints of Egypt's earliest communities. These are not the stone monuments of pharaohs, but the fragile remains of predynastic and early dynastic villages, the very cradle of Egyptian civilization in the country's northern reaches. Imagine the foundation of a simple reed hut, its post holes still visible in the packed earth, or a scatter of pottery shards from a type of jar that was made and used centuries before the invention of hieroglyphs. These are the humble beginnings from which an empire would eventually grow. Each layer of soil that washes away uncovers another clue about how scattered farming settlements along the delta's branches evolved into a unified, complex state. The discovery of an ancient grain silo, for instance, tells us not just what people ate, but that they had developed surplus and storage, the fundamental requirements for a society to support specialists like priests, administrators, and artisans. A single carved amulet, found in the silt of a long-vanished delta stream, can reveal the early symbols of power that would later become the regalia of kings. This is the origin story of Egypt being written not in stone, but in mud and clay, emerging just as the water threatens to wash it all away. The delta holds the key to understanding how it all began, and now, as it vanishes, it is finally giving up its deepest secrets. The Sinai's turquoise waters are revealing a lost maritime empire. Along the coast of the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aqaba, a tragic ecological transformation is granting archaeologists an unnerving clarity. Rising sea temperatures and acidification are causing widespread coral bleaching, a devastating event for marine life that turns vibrant reefs into ghostly white skeletons. While this is an environmental catastrophe, the death of the coral has an unintended consequence. It dramatically improves underwater visibility. The dense, colorful gardens that once obstructed the view are vanishing, and with them gone, the seafloor is laid bare. This newly transparent water is acting like a lifted veil, exposing shipwrecks and harbor ruins that have been obscured for millennia. The discoveries are rewriting our understanding of ancient Egypt's reach. We are finding the physical evidence of Pharaonic-era sea power, not along the familiar Nile, but in these deep, desert-flanked channels. The remnants of massive stone anchors and the timbers of seagoing vessels now emerge from the bleached seabed. These are the ships of legendary expeditions, the very fleets that voyaged to the fabled land of Punt to bring back incense, gold, and exotic animals for the pharaohs. Each exposed wreck is a cargo manifest from a forgotten journey, a tangible link to the stories inscribed on temple walls. On the shore, the shifting desert sands are performing their own excavation, uncovering the foundations of the ports that launched these epic voyages. The site of Tel El Marca is now believed to be the location of a major pharaonic port, likely the ancient forerunner to Suez. Here, archaeologists have found the stone footings of docks and storage buildings, the logistical heart of a sophisticated maritime operation. This was not a casual trading post, it was a state-sponsored gateway to the world. Imagine this port in its heyday, a bustling hub where sailors loaded vessels with trade goods and officials kept records of outgoing and incoming cargo. The combination of clearer water revealing the ships and blowing sand revealing the port creates a complete picture of an ancient industrial complex dedicated to exploration. These findings shatter the old image of Egypt as a purely river-based civilization. They reveal a people who were also master mariners, who built ships capable of surviving the open ocean, and who managed a complex supply chain across harsh desert to reach the sea. The very waters that are dying are thus illuminating the ambition of a civilization that looked not just inward to the Nile, but outward to the horizon, challenging us to see their history not in sand alone, but in the silent, deepening blue of the sea. This environmental shift is not merely uncovering artifacts, it is fundamentally upgrading our scientific toolkit. The very forces reshaping the landscape are granting us analytical powers that would have been impossible just a generation ago. As surfaces dry out and become exposed, the ground itself becomes a more transparent window into the past. Technologies like ground-penetrating radar, which sends pulses of energy into the earth to map buried features, work far more effectively in dry, compact soil. The signal travels cleaner and deeper, revealing the ghostly outlines of entire building foundations, tombs, and even ancient pathways without a single shovel touching the earth. Similarly, magnetometry, which measures tiny variations in the Earth's magnetic field caused by fired materials like kilns or disturbed soil from ancient digging, becomes incredibly precise on these barren, newly stripped surfaces. What was once a featureless patch of desert can now be mapped as a detailed blueprint of a lost village, all from the surface. The climate is effectively preparing the site for us, clearing away the clutter that once obscured our view. But the revelations go far beyond just seeing structures. The same elements that free these artifacts also make them speak. Bones and teeth, newly exposed from tombs or eroding riverbanks, are now available for cutting-edge isotopic analysis. When we study the chemistry locked inside an ancient tooth, we are reading a biography of that person's life. The isotopes of elements like strontium and oxygen act as a geographic fingerprint, telling us precisely where an individual grew up and where they traveled. A mummy discovered in a Theban tomb might have an isotopic signature pointing to a childhood in Nubia, revealing patterns of migration or enslavement that written records never mentioned. Furthermore, carbon and nitrogen isotopes preserved in the collagen of bones provide a detailed menu of their ancient diet. We can discern if a population primarily ate Nile fish, relied on farmed grains, or consumed meat from domesticated animals. This dietary data is a direct record of their environment. A sudden shift in the isotopic record towards more drought-resistant, lower-quality foods can pinpoint the exact period when a once fertile area began to fail. We can now directly link the abandonment of a bustling oasis settlement to a prolonged drought, evidenced by the starving bones of its last inhabitants. The artifacts are no longer silent objects in a museum case. A pottery shard tells us what they stored, but the isotope in a nearby skeleton tells us why the stores ran empty. A piece of a broken millstone shows us how they processed grain, but the chemistry in a child's tooth reveals the famine that made the grinding stop. Climate change, in its relentless progression, is not just giving us new pieces of the puzzle. It is handing us a new kind of lens, one that lets us see the story of survival and collapse written in the very molecules of the past, connecting environmental pressure to human fate with breathtaking clarity. This breathtaking unveiling carries a terrible cost. The same sun that illuminates a newly exposed wall also bakes its ancient mud bricks, causing them to crack and crumble to dust. The wind that scours sand from a wooden artifact then dries it out so completely that it splinters in a matter of days. A sudden rain shower, once a rare blessing in the desert, can now dissolve a fragile papyrus document that survived for 2,000 years in the dry earth. The very elements that act as our unlikely archaeological partners are, in the same breath, becoming agents of destruction. An object preserved for millennia in a perfect, stable environment is suddenly thrust into our volatile world, and its clock starts ticking at a terrifying speed. Consider the mighty Nubian fortresses re-emerging from Lake Nasser. For 50 years, the waterlogged mud acted as a preservative, keeping the monumental walls stable. Now, exposed to the scorching sun and dry desert air, the bricks are desiccating, their clay binding breaking down. A wall that withstood the pressure of water for decades can begin to slump and collapse in a single season. It is a heartbreaking sight, watching history emerge only to disintegrate before our eyes. The same is true for organic materials like leather, textiles, and wood. A sandal preserved in the sterile, dark, and dry conditions under the desert floor can be perfectly intact one day. The moment the wind removes its protective sandy blanket, it is assaulted by ultraviolet light, moisture, and temperature swings. The fibers weaken, the material becomes brittle, and what was a pristine artifact can turn to fragments in a year. This creates an archaeological emergency on a global scale. We are not just discovering new sites, we are losing them almost as quickly. The response has to be as swift as the threat. Teams are now racing against the weather, not just to dig, but to document. Before a fragile wall crumbles, it is scanned with lasers, creating a perfect digital twin down to the millimeter. A wooden boat emerging from the mud is photographed from every angle, its every detail recorded, so that even if it cannot be physically saved, its memory is secured for future generations. This is the new frontier of archaeology, a desperate race to preserve the past with technology, because the climate that gave it to us is already taking it away. These ancient ports were once bustling hubs, yet they vanished so completely that their very existence became a legend. Now, a relentless and prolonged drought along the Red Sea coast is pulling back the water's edge and clearing the arid landscape, making two key harbors, Wadi al-Jarf and Mirsa Gawassis, startlingly accessible to modern archaeologists. At Wadi al-Jarf, the receding shoreline has exposed the world's oldest known pier, a monumental stone structure that reaches into the sea like a ghostly finger. This was the launching point for pharaonic ambition, a place where massive cargo ships were loaded for voyages to the Sinai to bring back coveted copper and turquoise. But the drought's most profound gift was found inland, in a series of storage caves. As sand and hardy desert vegetation receded from the cave mouths, excavators made a discovery that sent ripples through history. They found papyrus fragments, the oldest ever unearthed in Egypt. These were not religious texts or royal decrees, but the personal logbooks and administrative records of a man named Mer, an official who detailed the very process of building the Great Pyramid. His notes describe the transportation of colossal limestone blocks from the quarries at Tura to the Giza Plateau, providing an eyewitness account of one of humanity's most incredible engineering projects. Farther south, at Mirsa Gawassis, the story of Egyptian sea power deepens. Here, the arid conditions have preserved the most fragile evidence of all, the rigging of the ships themselves. Archaeologists have found coils of rope, perfectly coiled and stored in caves, as if the sailors expected to return any day. They uncovered massive steering oars and bundles of cedar planks, all imported from Lebanon, ready for ship repair. This was not just a port, it was a naval supply depot, a strategic base for launching voyages into the open ocean. The artifacts prove the Egyptians were not merely river sailors, but master mariners who built a sophisticated maritime network 1,500 years before the Greeks. The dryness that now threatens the modern world has, in a profound irony, preserved the salted timbers and woven fibers that tell this story. Each rope and each papyrus scrap, made accessible by the arid climate, confirms that the pharaohs commanded a fleet capable of epic journeys, and their full story is only now being unrolled from the sand. The southern sun now bakes the rock with a new intensity. At Aswan, the source of Egypt's most iconic stone, a subtle environmental shift is sharpening our view of the past. Reduced humidity and the gradual retreat of tenacious desert plants are stripping the landscape bare. The granite cliffs and the vast quarries carved into them stand exposed as never before, their surfaces cleansed of the grimy film and obscuring roots that have cloaked them for centuries. This newly clarified stone is revealing a library of human ambition, etched directly into the living rock. Faint lines, once weathered and indistinct, are now sharpening into hieroglyphs. These are the newly legible inscriptions and stelae left by the men who ran this immense operation, the quarry foremen and expedition leaders. Their words are not royal propaganda, but the day-to-day memos of immense projects. One inscription might record the successful extraction of an obelisk, naming the crew chief and noting the number of workers involved. Another might be a simple prayer for safety, carved by a foreman before his team began the perilous work of undercutting a multi-ton block. These texts add a human voice to the superhuman scale of the quarries. We can almost hear the foreman's relief when a prized obelisk was finally freed from the bedrock without a crack, or his frustration over a delayed shipment of tools. They detail the staggering logistics, from organizing teams of 1,000 men to managing the water and food supplies needed to sustain them in this harsh environment. This is the granular reality behind the grandeur, the administrative chatter that made the pharaoh's visions possible. Each freshly cleaned inscription transforms an anonymous engineering marvel into a documented human achievement, a story of management, muscle, and stone, waiting for a drier world to let it speak again. The desert wind is still writing this story with every grain of sand it moves. At the ancient city of Oxyhinchus, a sprawling metropolis of the dead, the legendary garbage dumps continue to give up their written ghosts. For over a century, archaeologists have known about this site, a vast repository where citizens discarded everything from official documents to personal letters for hundreds of years. The initial excavations yielded a literary treasure trove, but the work was far from finished. Now, the very environment is acting as a meticulous curator. Shifting sand dunes, driven by new wind patterns, are performing a constant, natural excavation. They slide away from one area, exposing a layer sealed for 2 millennia, only to bury another, preserving it for future generations. This endless, sandy dance ensures that the site is never truly exhausted. Each season, erosion scours the surface, revealing fragments of papyri that were inaccessible to the original dig teams. These are not the grand, intact scrolls of library dreams, but fragile pieces, often no bigger than a postage stamp. Yet on these tiny scraps, the past whispers. A single piece might hold a line from a lost play by Sophocles, a poem by Sappho thought gone forever, or a saying of Jesus that never made it into the canonical Gospels. Other fragments are profoundly mundane, and in their ordinariness, they are equally priceless. A tax receipt for a small plot of barley, a complaint letter about a noisy neighbor, an invitation to a wedding feast, these are the raw data of daily existence. They paint a picture of Roman Egypt in vibrant, unexpected colors, far from the marble halls of emperors and in the dusty, sun-baked streets of a provincial town. The potential locked in the soil of Oxyhinchus is limitless. For every text that has been painstakingly pieced together and translated, thousands more likely remain, buried in the sand, waiting for the right gust of wind to bring them to the surface. This is a powerful reminder that the desert has not yet surrendered all its written secrets, that the dialogue with the past is ongoing, and that the most intimate voices from antiquity may still be lying in the sand, patiently waiting for their moment to speak. The fertile black soil that gave Egypt its ancient name is now surrendering its very first stories. For millennia, the Nile's annual flood deposited a rich, life-giving layer of silt, building up the land and burying the earliest human settlements under meters of earth. These ancient settlement mounds, known as tells, became time capsules, but today, that process is violently reversing. Modern farming practices and altered rainfall patterns are accelerating soil erosion, carving deep gullies into these precious mounds. As the dark earth washes toward the sea, it is performing a brutal but revealing excavation, cutting straight down through the layers of time to expose the very cradle of Egyptian civilization. We are now seeing the foundations of villages that existed over 5,000 years before the first pharaoh ever ruled. The erosion is peeling back the mud brick outlines of simple, round huts from the Naqada cultures, the people who laid the groundwork for everything that followed. Scattered around these emerging floors are the tools of their daily existence, flint knives still sharp enough to cut, and pottery jars decorated with the earliest attempts at symbolic art, like simple boats and stick-figure animals. These are not the grand artifacts of an empire, but the humble possessions of the first farmers who learned to harness the Nile's power. Perhaps the most poignant revelations are the burials that the erosion uncovers. A skeleton is found curled in a fetal position, surrounded by a few simple pots meant to hold provisions for the afterlife. This posture and these grave goods tell a profound story of a society developing its first spiritual beliefs, its first concepts of what lies beyond death. Each body, each tool, each potsherd is a crucial data point in the greatest mystery of all. How did these scattered, independent villages along the river slowly coalesce into the world's first nation-state? The transition from a Naqada farming village to the unified state of Egypt was not a sudden event, but a slow cultural and political evolution. The artifacts now tumbling out of the eroding soil are the missing links in that story. A piece of pottery with a specific design might show the influence of one village group over another, hinting at early trade networks or the spread of powerful chieftains. The discovery of obsidian, a volcanic glass that could only come from distant lands, proves that even these early communities were connected to far-flung trade routes. This uncontrolled erosion is a double-edged sword, offering a priceless, unplanned glimpse into a period with no written records, while simultaneously destroying the very context that gives these finds their meaning. Once a burial is exposed by water, its bones and artifacts can be scattered and lost forever, their story scrambled. So archaeologists are in a desperate race against the rain and the river, trying to read the story of our collective beginnings as it literally washes away before our eyes. This race against time has forged a new kind of archaeology, one that prioritizes pixels over pics. As soon as a tomb painting is revealed by a retreating dune or a shifting riverbank, teams now deploy a digital toolkit to capture it in astonishing detail. They use ground-based laser scanners that fire millions of measured points at a surface, building a precise 3D cloud of the entire structure. Simultaneously, they employ photogrammetry, taking hundreds of overlapping photographs from every conceivable angle. Powerful software then stitches these images together, wrapping the laser-scanned skeleton with a photorealistic skin. The result is a perfect digital twin, a model so accurate it can show the individual chisel marks left by the stonecutter or the subtle brushstrokes of the artist who painted a god's eye thousands of years ago. Imagine a vibrant mural of a goddess, her colors miraculously bright after millennia in the dark. The moment sunlight and air touch it, those pigments begin their irreversible fade. But a high-resolution digital scan captures every hue at its peak brilliance. A researcher 10 years from now, or 100, can zoom into that virtual model and study a crack in the plaster, analyze the mineral composition of the blue paint, or even simulate how torchlight would have flickered across the scene, all without ever setting foot in the tomb. This digital excavation extends to crumbling architecture. A mud brick fortress re-emerging from a lake might be too fragile to touch, its walls sagging under the sun. Using drones equipped with specialized cameras, archaeologists can map the entire site from above, creating a topographic model that reveals drainage patterns and erosion threats invisible from the ground. This data allows them to perform virtual stability tests, understanding why one wall is collapsing faster than another. They can then digitally reconstruct the fortress in its original glory, rebuilding collapsed ramparts and gateways in the computer to understand its defensive design. These are not just fancy pictures. They are permanent, data-rich records that outlive the physical objects. They ensure that a statue dissolved by salt water or a temple erased by a flood does not vanish from human knowledge. This digital legacy becomes a seed for future discovery, allowing new generations of scholars to ask questions we haven't even thought of yet, and offering everyone, everywhere, the chance to walk through a world that is disappearing before our eyes. These discoveries are not just academic stories. They are unfolding in the backyards of modern Egyptian families. The same shifting sands that reveal a pharaoh's statue can also bury a farmer's field, and the receding waters that expose an ancient port might drain a local fishery. For the people living in these landscapes, climate change is a daily reality with a double edge, offering both unexpected opportunity and profound disruption. When a new tomb is found near a village, it can bring a sudden surge of hope. Tourists arrive, needing guides, drivers, food, and lodging. A small economy blossoms around the mystery of the past, providing jobs and income in regions where both can be scarce. This newfound attention can foster a powerful sense of local pride, as communities see their home transformed into a stage for world history. But this windfall is often fragile and uneven. The very process of excavating a site can require people to relocate, severing their connection to ancestral land. A newly declared archaeological zone might restrict where people can build new homes, farm, or graze their animals, creating tension between preserving the past and securing the future. The climate itself adds another layer of pressure, as more frequent droughts or floods threaten both the ancient treasures and the modern livelihoods that depend on the same fragile environment. In response, a new approach is taking root, one known as community archaeology. This isn't about scientists simply digging and leaving. It is a partnership that values the deep, generational knowledge of the local people. A farmer might recognize a certain type of pottery shard because his grandfather pointed them out. An elder might know the local name for a mound that has always been considered special, a story that leads archaeologists straight to a significant find. By integrating this living memory with scientific tools, we don't just find more artifacts, we understand them better. These collaborations also ensure that preservation efforts support the community. Training and hiring local workers for excavations and site maintenance keeps the economic benefits within the area. Educational programs help young people see a future in protecting their own heritage, becoming the next guardians of these wonders. The goal is to weave the threads of ancient history and modern life into a single, stronger fabric, proving that the story being uncovered by the changing climate is not just about who we were, but about who we are, and how we can navigate this new world together. This pattern of climate-driven discovery is rewriting history far beyond the deserts of Egypt. Across the world, melting glaciers in Norway are spitting out perfectly preserved Viking artifacts, from iron-tipped spears to woolen tunics, telling new stories of travel across mountain passes. On the coast of Wales, fierce storms are stripping away peat to reveal the stumps of ancient forests that flourished thousands of years before the pyramids were even a dream. Every continent is experiencing this strange unveiling, yet Egypt stands apart as a uniquely powerful case study. Its history is not a series of forgotten chapters, but a continuous, 5,000-year narrative of one of humanity's foundational civilizations. The objects now tumbling from its sands and emerging from its rivers are not isolated relics. They are direct, tangible links in an unbroken chain of human achievement. This immense, documented timeline makes the current revelations there especially poignant. Each new find does not just add a piece to a puzzle, it reconnects a thread in the grand tapestry of our shared past. Furthermore, Egypt exists at the mercy of extreme environmental forces. It is a river civilization in a desert, a coastline under siege, a nation where a slight shift in temperature or a centimeter rise in sea level can erase millennia of history. This acute vulnerability mirrors our own global predicament on a compressed and intensified scale. The very sands that preserved its history are now shifting in the wind, and the same Nile that gave it life is now withdrawing to expose its origins. The artifacts emerging are therefore more than archaeological treasures. They are a stark, urgent message. Our environmental crisis is not a future threat alone. It is a present-day force actively reshaping our understanding of the entire human story, unearthing our past even as it jeopardizes our future. Our journey across a changing Egypt reveals a profound and unsettling truth. The same warming seas that threaten our coastlines have resurrected the drowned ports of the pharaohs. The very winds that intensify desert storms have peeled back the sands from lost temples. From the eroding delta, where the first villages of Egypt are now tumbling out of the soil, to the deserts of Nubia, where mighty fortresses are re-emerging from a shrinking lake, climate change has become archaeology's most reluctant partner. Each of these discoveries is a bittersweet victory. A newly read papyrus or a perfectly scanned tomb painting adds a brilliant piece to the human story, yet its appearance is a direct symptom of a planet in profound distress. These artifacts are gifts delivered with a warning. They are physical keys to our shared past, handed to us just as the environment that preserved them is becoming unhinged. This is not a slow, academic process. It is a desperate race against the clock. As these treasures emerge, they face immediate destruction from the sun, wind, and water that freed them. The urgent work of conservation, of digital preservation and physical protection, has never been more critical. Protecting our collective future now involves a vital, parallel mission to save the fragile history that is rising to meet us. The story of human civilization is being rewritten in real time, and we are the first generation that gets to read it, and the last that might be able to save it. We would love to hear your thoughts on this complex relationship between our planet's crisis and its revelations in the comments below.